July 6, 2011 session of the Cape Cod Regional Government Assembly of Delegates. I'm glad to call this meeting to order, and before we have our customary moment of silence to honor our troops, I'd like to recognize the delegate from Bourne, Richard Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today we learned of the passing of Roland DuPont, who was a selectman. He was a county commissioner, and he was an Assembly Delegates member and the Speaker of the Assembly. So I'd like to add his name to the moment of silence.
Thank you. I knew Roland. He was a good guy. He was a big supporter of county government, and he'll be missed. Thank you, and now we'll rise to the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Clerk will call the roll.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Richard Anderson.
Here.
Cheryl Andrews. Here. Ronald Bergstrom.
Here.
Leo Kukunis.
Here.
Christopher Kanega. James Killian.
Here.
Marcia King. Here. Thomas Lynch.
Here.
Teresa Martin. Here. Deborah McCutcheon.
Here.
Spiro Mitrakostas.
Here.
John Ullman. Paul Pilcher.
Here.
Anthony Scalise. Julia Taylor. Mr. Speaker, we have a quorum with 71.53% of the delegates present.
Thank you. I'll now need a motion to approve the calendar of business.
Mr. Speaker, I move that we approve the calendar of business, but that we change around the order. Seeing how Senator O'Leary and Senator Rauschenbach aren't here, it'd only be fair to have the other people come before them. Specifically, communications from Eric Bigler and Preston Ribnick, and if possible, the communications from the members of the public. Okay, so that's number 10 and switch to number 11. Yes. Okay, fine with that. I need a second on that.
Second.
Moved and seconded to amend the calendar of business. I'll now need a motion to approve the amended calendar.
Under discussion?
Oh, sure.
Just have some clarity. You're going to move 10 so that it's between 11 and 12?
Yes. Okay. Now I'm still going to need a motion to approve the amended calendar.
Motion to approve.
Okay, moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, that brings us to communication. We need a motion now to approve the Journal of June 1st, 2011. Is that what we have?
Yes. Yes, it is, Mr. Speaker. The last one before that was canceled. I move approval of the Journal of June 1st, 2011.
Second.
Okay, is there any additions or corrections to the Journal? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, now we have, normally we'd have communications from the Board of Regional Commissioners, however, they don't seem to be here. They've expressed their intention that there's some concerns over the public meeting law, so we'll see whether we get representation from them in the future. Although I think the audit, mostly they're required under our regulations to be here, but not the open meeting law, but there's the governance, manual governance here. Okay, so that brings us to Article 11, communications from Eric Bidler and Preston Ribnick. Okay.
Mr. Speaker,
yeah.
Before you get too far along, we should have communications from public officials.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, I missed that. Do we have any public officials who wish to speak? Okay. Now you're clear. My eyes are falling on me.
Okay, can you hear me? Good afternoon, and I'd like to first begin by expressing sincere appreciation to the Assembly of Delegates and to, especially to the Speaker for allowing us time this afternoon. I'd like to begin. I know time is of the essence, so we're going to jump right in. I'd like to begin by, I'm sure most of you are wondering who we are and why we're here this afternoon, and I'd like to begin by expressing first who we are. Again, I'm Preston Ribnick. Thank you for the lights. I'm a full-time resident of Wellfleet, a business owner of a national healthcare education and consulting firm which I founded in 1979. I have a master's degree in urban studies and public administration from Tulane. And I'm a founding member of the Cape-wide organization called Windwise Cape Cod. I'm one of the founding members of that. Eric Bigler will also be speaking this afternoon, and Eric, as you know, is a full-time Connecticut resident. He's a regular visitor to Cape for the past 35 years, and he has an extended family that lives in Wellfleet. Eric is president of Save Our Seashore, and he's a former executive in the financial services industry. You may have tracked this about a month ago, a little over a month ago. A number of citizens on Cape Cod posted an online petition. I'll reference that petition in just a few moments. But thus far, the petition has been signed online by more than 300 citizens have signed it. The next thing I'd like to talk to you about is how do we become involved in this issue? And I think each person of the many people who've been engaged in this issue for the last 6 months to a year came to it different ways. I think Eric and I tracked, and a number of other people here this afternoon tracked the same process. We began by attending public meetings sponsored by the Cape and Vineyard Electric Cooperative, CVEC. And we had just basic interest. We saw their name come up over and over again as they were advancing ideas for wind projects and solar projects. So as citizens, we said we'd like to learn more about this organization. So we went to public meetings, among them in Wellfleet, Harwich, Brewster, Dennis, and others. And once we got to the meetings, we started listening to the CVEC representatives. And though we were trying to ask questions, one of the things we noticed was that in all of the meetings, they put 3x5 note cards. And from the audience, the only way you could ask the CVEC representatives is by filling out these 3x5 note cards with no follow-up question possibility. So we were curious about that, and we began doing further research. We began to look at the organization and membership of CVEC, which we knew nothing about initially. What were their projects in the past and projects on the drawing board? We also looked at their sources of funding to find out, a little bit more about the organization. And we very quickly came to realize that the major source of funding for the CVEC was from something called the Cape Light Compact. And so we began naturally to look at that organization, say, where do they get their money? And how do they transfer that money over to CVEC to be the funding source of CVEC? And so we really began to, and made a serious attempt to understand the structure, and the overlapping management and membership of both the county leadership, CLC, and CVEC. We began by attending Barnstable County meetings, and frankly, to be honest with you, 6 or 8 months ago, I wasn't even aware of Barnstable County government. And I think that's true of a lot of people. So we began to attend the meetings to learn, and that's all we wanted, the information so we could learn. We began attending some of your meetings because you were talking about the minimum performance standards. Some of us even spoke at some of those meetings. We attended the commissioners' meetings and others. And then we began to get further information, and we began to ask questions. Many of us in this room attended many weeks of the Barnstable County Commissioners meeting, trying to get on the agenda, trying to ask questions. We attended the CVEC meetings, which was quite an experience. We even attended the Cape Light Compact meetings. And as we began to attend these meetings, we became increasingly alarmed and concerned with the reactions and the behaviors and the resistance that was exhibited by county officials, by CVEC, and by CLC. And so why are we here? Why are we taking your 30 minutes today? The first, and I think everyone here and the hundreds who aren't here, we're just interested citizens in good government. And I feel heartsick as I see in my lifetime what's happened to civil life in our country when so many people have stepped outside the process. You know, and I have to say I'm one of them. I've been busy in my career for 32 years, slowing up a little bit. You know, and I am interested in good government. And here's the reason why. I believe citizens have rights. I believe citizens in our democracy, whether it's a county, the local, or the national or state level, we can attend and observe and participate in public meetings. I believe that. I believe we can respectfully ask questions of elected and appointed officials and public servants. I believe we can request and review public documents and information as provided by law. I believe as citizens we should be treated with dignity and respect by public officials and appointed officials and public employees. I believe and expect accountability to the public by public employees and elected and appointed officials. In fact, delegates, on your website, on the Barnstable County website, which was one of the first sites I went to when I started doing research, it proudly proclaims that Barnstable County stands for two things: open and proactive government. I think as citizens we expect a full accounting of all expenditures of public funds. But listen to what I'm about to tell you. We expect these things, but most importantly, there are no laws or statutes, nor history, nor traditions in our country where public servants or elected or appointed officials have the right to examine the motives of citizens to determine if they're going to allow and respect these rights. Do you understand what I'm saying? They can't look at the motives behind, as long as we're respectful, as long as we're following the law. It's not correct for anybody to look at it and say, well, why do they want this information? Here's what we've experienced. Those are the rights. I'll tell you what we've experienced. And if you doubt it, many of these people in the room today have lived what we've lived over the last 6 months in Barnstable County. What we found is that key officials have refused to answer questions on substantive matters. They have refused to set up any meetings with us after week of imploring them, sit down with us, talk with us. No. They refuse to provide relevant public documents over and over again. They've erected numerous barriers to disclose public documents. They displayed, and this is one of the things that is most painful to me personally, because in every phone call, in every encounter, in every meeting that we were fortunate to have over these months, in every meeting we attended, we treated every person with absolute dignity and respect, and what we received, unfortunately, is a display of unmistakable hostility to all public inquiries. And we found that CVIC and CLC have failed to address legitimate public concerns over and over again. They have resorted to use, quote-unquote, executive session in an inappropriate manner. They failed to provide opportunities for public comments or questions at their meetings. They failed to provide timely disclosure of meeting minutes. They failed to provide detailed financial statements. And here's what's happened in my life. Because I've gotten involved in this, and Eric, and the many people in this room, and as I've gone about my daily life and visiting friends and the parties or meetings that I go to, people have come up to me and they've asked, Preston, well, why is this happening? Why don't they just give you the information? Why won't they make the meetings with you? These are public documents. Why won't they provide them to you? Why do they put outlandish costs to give you these routine documents? And the answer is, I don't know. I have no idea today, after 6 months of effort, why this has happened. And so, as I mentioned to you, we put a petition on. A number of us decided to put a petition on to find out if other citizens were concerned. And today, you can go online and see more than 300 citizens have signed it. And all we wanted these to do is to address the legitimate concerns of public regarding the propriety of the past actions and stated purposes of the CLC and Cape Light Compact, and not limited to the transfer of significant funds from CLC to CVIC, and the stated intention of CVIC to appeal to the Mass Department of Public Utilities for the purpose of exempting the Brewster Wind Project from applicable permitting laws of the town of Brewster and from the permit requirements of Barnstable County. The petition asks to eliminate the deeply embedded, we've determined as competitive conflicts of interest in the administration and management of these entities, to preserve the integrity of Barnstable County government with respect to the management of these entities, and finally, and most importantly, to uphold and to promote the core democratic values of openness, transparency, accountability, and public participation in all aspects of county government. And so, as we read the charter, we found and we believe and we maintain that the Assembly of Delegates, as the legislative body of Barnstable County, has rights. And I draw your attention to Section 2/7, Inquiring and Investigation of the Barnstable County Charter of Government. And 2.7 states the Assembly of Delegates may at any time, upon a request filed by any of its members, request a report on any aspect of the Cape Cod regional government by making such a request in writing to the Board of Regional Commissioners. And as you see at the bottom, the Assembly of Delegates may, by a vote of representing the majority of the population of the Cape Cod regional government, delegate any number of its members as an ad hoc committee to consult with the Board of Regional Commissioners or the Administrator on any matter, and to report back to the full Assembly of Delegates with the results of such meeting. And finally, before I turn it over to Eric, here's specifically what we were requesting this afternoon, and Eric will amplify this. To appoint a formal committee to respond to the concerns of the public and require relevant information on behalf of the full Assembly. 2, to write letters, just to write letters to the boards of CVIC and CLC formally requesting written answers to specific questions and copies of relevant documents that we have failed to be able to get the information, have the questions answered, or to receive documents, public documents. 3, to schedule a public meeting with management of CVIC and CLC to allow the public to participate and ask questions. That's what an open and transparent and accountable and a proactive government should do. To ask CVIC to ask CVIC to agree voluntarily to submit the Brewster Wind Project to review by the Cape Cod Commission under the newly adopted wind turbine minimum performance standards that you debated in this room, and we sat here, and we honor you. We honor the fact that that was done in a transparent manner, that the citizens could participate, that there was nothing done in the back room in executive session. And finally, if CVIC refuses, we request the Assembly, formally request the Assembly to make a discretionary referral, which you have the right to do, of the Brewster Wind project to the Cape Cod Commission for review as a development of regional impact. How is it possible on Cape Cod for you to go through the process in the Cape Cod Commission and the planning staff and the commissioners to endorse it and to ratify it, to go through all that, and then have the first project out of the chute, the Brewster Wind project, to try to exempt themselves from their review? It makes no sense. I'd like to turn it over to my colleague, Eric Bibler. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm Eric Bibler from Weston, Connecticut. Looks like I might be a little short of time. I'm going to sort of jump around and throw the script away here, but the first thing I want to say...
Mr. Bibler, you have about 15 minutes. We're not going to... No buzzer will go off, but reasonable adherence to the...
I'm going to try. I mean, I will.
We did have a buzzer.
Whenever you cut me off. I've been speaking on 3-minute egg timers, so that's a relative luxury. The first first thing I want to say is to the Speaker and to the Assembly is thank you for adding this item to your agenda. I want to assure you it's a privilege that we don't take for granted. As I think Preston mentioned, we have been trying to get on the agenda of the executive branch of government for 12 to 14 weeks now. I've lost count. The chairman of the executive branch refuses to put this item on the agenda. Now, there's a very important distinction here. As I mentioned, we've been speaking on 3-minute egg timers in public comment, but if the item's not on the agenda, we can't engage with the county commissioners on the topic because it hasn't been noticed. And likewise, we can't participate in your meetings. But one of the things that makes this different, other than this generous amount of time, is that we can engage with you. And you can ask me questions, and if you have the luxury of time, I know you missed a meeting and you have a lot to do, I would encourage you, please, to ask any questions on any things that are not clear. I think I want to talk about a little bit about how I became interested in CVEC, because it's a little bit of an odd story. I kept running across them over the past year and a half when I got involved especially in Wellfleet. They pitched Wellfleet just like they pitched every other town on the Cape with a wind turbine proposal. And I kept finding them in the Lower Cape Development Roundtable in the minutes. And I never really understood them. They were a mystery to me. I couldn't really figure out how they were constituted, where they got their money. It didn't really matter that much to me. Last December, someone in Dennis sent me a summary of a meeting from the Dennis Water District in which CVEC made a number of provocative comments. Maggie Downey and Mark Zielinski were there. And they had come to the Dennis Water District to bring them the bad news that they were going to renege on the deal that they had proposed. And they made a number of statements that I found it woke me right up. They basically said there had been a sea change in the sentiment of the board of directors away from support of wind, that the support was lacking. They said that the environment on the Cape had changed. They said that they had had two major $10 million financings over the prior year fall through. They said that it was very difficult to finance projects on Cape Cod. And they told Dennis that they were no longer going to be able to front these costs for legal costs and engineering for the project. One of the Dennis Water Commissioners actually asked them, what do you bring to the table if you're not going to do any of that? And then some discussion ensued there. And they also made the statement on, more than once I believe, that they were focusing all of their efforts on Brewster Wind. They basically they wanted to complete this project. They mentioned how much money they spent. They, in addition to all the financials that you might find on CVEC, you'll find that they also have drawn down $575,000 from the Mass Clean Energy Center. They got money for Harwich. Harwich didn't go through. They hadn't spent much of it. They received permission to roll that over into the Brewster project. So they have, in addition to whatever they've disclosed, which isn't much, frankly, on their finances, there's a $575,000 that didn't flow through their financial statements. So they've spent a huge amount of money. So it became very obvious. So I called the person that sent it to me, and I said, am I reading this correctly? Because this smacks to me of desperation and, a desire to want to recoup this money that they've spent at all costs. And I honestly think it explains a lot in terms of the attitude with which that project was pursued, subsequently. So I began to look into it, and I began to request some documents, and I began to ask some questions. And one of the questions I always tell people when they're interested in public entities, read the minutes. Go to the websites. So I started reading the minutes, and one of the things I found that there was a lot of discussion about obtaining clean renewable energy bonds. And for those of you who are not familiar with that program, the U.S. Treasury advances money to entities like CVEC to put up renewable energy projects, and they lend them money at 0% interest. Now, that's not to say it doesn't cost us anything. The U.S. Treasury pays the interest of approximately 4.5%, but the borrower doesn't have to pay anything. So, of course, that was the preferred option for CVEC to finance both Harwich and Brewster. And I also found an old press release from the folks who run, I guess it was the U.S. Treasury, about allocations under CREBs, Clean Renewable Energy Bonds. And they had been received an allocation for $10 million each for Harwich and Brewster. So far, so good. They qualify for 0% financing. That's going to make a big difference to them. I also found in their minutes a lot of discussion about the fact that they had not properly formed. They had made some sort of unspecified mistake during their formation in 2007. They discovered it belatedly. It appeared to be connected to this CREB financing, which appeared to be at jeopardy, but you couldn't tell from the minutes what was actually going on. So they were desperate to resolve this issue. They went to the Secretary of Commonwealth. They went to their representatives. They did a lot of things. They finally ended up getting special legislation passed. I have no idea what it says, because I don't know how to research that, to fix their problem where they formed improperly. But I could never figure out whether they could qualify for 0% financing. So meanwhile, they're out in Brewster proclaiming the benefits of their project and the $3.6 million that Brewster will make. And they're telling all of their CVEC members of all the benefits that they will reap from this project. And yet it was impossible to tell whether the economic viability of the project was dependent upon 0% financing or an alternative method through the Rural Utilities Service, which is another government program. Started looking into that. It turned out that CVEC had indeed gone through the initial steps to obtain money from the Rural Utilities Service. As a matter of fact, there was a public comment period last summer, which no one knew about, unless you were told by CVEC, because their public disclosure requirement consisted of a 1-inch ad next to the firewood ads in the local newspapers, and that's what they did. And then they invited all of their friends to write letters of support in the summer of 2010. So there really was no public debate, and there was no public discussion. In January, it became evident that this period was about to expire for comment during what's called the environmental value assessment. The rural utility, once people in Brewster, in the thick of this thing, found out that they had missed their opportunity to comment, they asked the Rural Utility Service to extend the deadline from, I think it was mid-February to end of February, mid-March to end of March. Rural Utility Service received between 150 and 200 new comments from residents of Brewster who had no idea that they'd had an opportunity to comment. And I started investigating that program. And I have some background in finance. Turns out in that program, you have the best you can do is to borrow money around 4.25%. And I hope this isn't boring, but I think this is relevant. Turns out that, if you have to borrow through the Rural Utilities Service, that's an extra $4.5 million for this project. Now, the lifetime revenues of the project were probably less than $20 million. So, $4.5 million off the top line in the form of interest expense is pretty significant. I also talked to the regional head of the Rural Utilities Service, and their loan application process is extremely demanding. Their standards are very rigorous. Their loan loss experience is essentially zero. They require a variety of forms of reserves to be incorporated into the pro forma financial statements. This is no easy thing to get a loan from them and to get through this process. So, it was relevant to every citizen of Barnstable County, and it was relevant to every citizen in Brewster, and it was relevant to any person that wanted to know whether CVEC's proposed project was viable, whether or not they could obtain financing at 0% or 4.25%, 4.5%. I asked asked them for pro formas. I asked the town of Brewster for pro formas. I was told they're proprietary and confidential. As I mentioned, I come from a financial background. I've never seen a municipal project, I've never seen a stock issue or a bond issue or anything of the kind where a set of estimates about the future performance that accompanies a bond offering or stock offering or loan, where anybody says that their estimates about their future ability to pay is proprietary and confidential, and we can't share that information because it's competitive. It's really not competitive. It's just a set of assumptions, and the idea that there would be any competitors that might learn some information about what it costs to run a wind turbine project from CVEC because they put out a pro forma is frankly absurd. But you need that information to be able to understand what are the assumptions and what's the basis for promoting this project. I think that citizens of Barnstable County are entitled to all those things. To this date, I have not received any of them. I asked as many ways as I knew how. I asked in writing. I asked key individuals. I asked questions, I don't know, on 3x5 cards, I think, to try to find out if this was an option. And I got responses like, in January, I made a records request. It was ignored. I had to appeal it. Once I appealed it to the Public Records Division, it was answered. The answer to that question was, this is a question and not a records request. Okay. I then had to request all documents relating to that topic because I didn't really know what to request. I recently received a fee estimate of $10,000 for all records relating to this clean renewable energy bonds. And this request and several others were all bundled together, multiple thousands of dollars, and I was told I couldn't separate them. I really just want a yes or no answer to that question. I don't need to bring a certified check for $10,000 to find out if that's still an option. That's just one example. I'm going to read you something because I'm running out of time. I wanted to talk to you about the finances. I think a key issue here that you need to focus on is the transfers of money between the Cape Light Compact and the Cape and Vineyard Electric Cooperative. There's a serious question of interpretation of Cape Light Compact's charter and whether or not this is an appropriate use of the compact's money. There have been quotes by actually both the chairman of CVEC and the president of CVEC and the chairman of the Cape Light Compact to the effect that there are no secrets here and there have been no secret transfers of money from the Cape Light Compact to CVEC. That's false. There have been over $2 million of transfers from the Cape Light Compact to CVEC. Only $1 million, until recently, only $1 million of those transfers had ever been publicly disclosed. I don't understand how you can say, if it's never been publicly disclosed, it's not secret, but it happened. I really don't understand that. That's one of the reasons we are asking this body to intervene, because we have made records requests. The records law is very weak. We can't make them specific. We can only make them general. We get back these fantastic fee estimates for these records requests. We also currently have 3 complaints, formal complaints pending with the Attorney General's office for open meeting law violations. And we have records requests pending that we've had to appeal repeatedly. Now, one of the things that has occurred, and I'm going to have to wrap up here, is Preston mentioned this issue of executive session. Now, formerly, until we complained bitterly about it, both of these entities used to convene their meetings, go into executive session for hours on end. Preston, Sheila Bowen, and me and some other people spent hours in the hallway over at Barnstable Superior Court because they saved their open meeting portion of their meeting until after their executive sessions, we would say for the express purpose of discouraging us from attending. They maintain that all of these executive sessions have been legitimate. Recently, the CVEC director from the town of West Tisbury, a new director, was summoned by his selectmen to give a report to the selectmen. I have a transcript here. I have DVDs of it. You can watch it online. I'll send it to you. One of the questions the selectman had was, what's the relationship between Cape Light Compact and CVEC? Answer. The Cape Light Compact was formed as an agency to provide funding opportunities for energy efficiency and renewable energy, but it did not have the legal mandate to run projects, so the CVEC was formed specifically to be able to. Does that make CVEC a developer? Yes, in essence, it's a developer. So what is the relationship between the Cape Light Compact and the CVEC as such? I mean, is Cape Light Compact the bank? Answer, that's a way to look at it. To date, the Cape Light Compact has provided $2 million to CVEC. The other members, every other town in this room in Barnstable County, as of the fiscal year end of 2010, have provided a grand total of $350. Yes, indeed, the Cape Light Compact has been the bank for CVEC, but I think you'll be hard-pressed to find justification for that in the chart. This is the problem. Selectmen, the Brewster project is somewhat controversial. Could you enlighten us on that? Director, yes, the Brewster project had widespread support and 5 years of deep support in its community. And recently a group of people called Save Our Seashore, which has a director who comes from Connecticut and doesn't even live in Brewster, decided to make that a target. And he's raised a lot of fluff about it, and he's asking for information about how the CVEC and the CLC is funded, where the money goes, and he's barraging CVEC and CLC with a lot of requests for information. And the director continues, the response of CVEC has been to go into closed session a lot so that they are not required to provide details and information which would hamstring their progress. The selectmen, how are they allowed to do that? Director, they're allowed to do it according to, I'm not an expert on this, but I understand according to the open meeting laws, there are methods by which they can operate an executive session. Selectmen, they're very limited. Director, I suppose they are. Selectmen, well, we're well aware of that. Director, well, we're not. Selectmen, so the CVEC is going into closed session because they're getting opposition? Is that what they're saying? Director, they're going into closed session to try to prevent their progress from being delayed by delaying tactics. That's the way I read it. I'm out of time. There's much more I can tell you. I just want to finally say, I called a CLC director last week who I've been told has had some serious ongoing concerns for some number of years. By the way, I've also had been contacted months ago by a CVEC director, contacted me to express his concerns. And when I contacted this fellow from Cape Light Compact, as soon as I identified myself, he started screaming at me. You're not even from Cape Cod, and you're all a bunch of NIMBYs anyway. And I said, well, it's true, I'm not from Cape Cod. I have family in Cape Cod. I've been coming here for 35 years. A lot of friends in Cape Cod. I said, and how can I be a NIMBY anyway? I live 200 miles away. And he said, well, you're all part of the NIMBY crowd. And he hung up on me. And this petition asks for relatively modest action on your part. And I just want to say, the reason for the petition, it basically just says, can you write some letters and get some information and use your influence to hope that they won't give you the same treatment that they gave members of the public and stand up for your constituents. And it was meant to impress upon the commissioners and the assembly that this isn't a bad guy from Connecticut. This is really about something much larger than that. Thank you.
I'll open it up to questions, but I'd like to ask you, if you just have a second. You talked about the attempt to finance, the Brewster project, and you said there were two alternatives. Mm-hmm. Who is the borrower? You made it clear. Is the borrower CVEC itself, or is the borrower the contractor?
No, the borrower would be CVEC.
Okay, so the public entity is the borrower from these organizations.
That's right. And I just want to say quickly, one of the mysteries to me as a former banker was how any entity that had zero net worth or negative net worth could become the borrower to begin with, but that's...
And the other question I have to ask you, and I know I wrote this in response to one of your emails, is it is unquestionably that the Cape Light Compact is a branch of county government. And you're right, this CBAC, I was there at the inception. They went around and they discussed the necessity of creating CBAC. But CBAC, it could be argued, is not a branch of county government. I know that argument has been made by others.
I'm not making that argument.
The Cape Light Compact is in our budget. It comes in front of us. But the CBAC is not necessarily a branch of county government. So, but they do have a board of directors. In other words, the responsibility back to the public actually runs through the appointed officials. They're appointed by the various boards of selectmen. Am I right about that? I mean,
well, yes, I would like to address that for 30 seconds.
Well, I guess my question is why you got your 30 seconds is why have you not taken that route to go less? I'm sure you must have supporters in Wellfleet and Bourne and Harwich and so on, is to have one of them stand up in front of the Board of Selectmen and say, I would request that you bring in your representative from CBAC. I mean, we can listen to this, but the direct line is through that process. And I just wondered why you haven't taken advantage of that.
I would say my response is this. That is certainly legitimate for every town to ask its own representative, for a report and to voice its opinion about what CBAC hopes to accomplish and everything else. But along the way here, when we started asking for the commissioners, the executive branch, and the assembly to intervene, just in terms of understanding what's going on there and acquiring information, that was rapidly turned by CBAC and CLC into a question of whether or not you have any direct authority over them. And we've never maintained that you can tell them what to do. They have boards, they're independent, they vote, all those things. But here's what's really important is you have CBAC and CLC were formed with the support of Barnstable County and to accomplish certain goals that are county-wide because the county government couldn't do it, so you created these entities like a municipal aggregator for the compact and CBAC to be able to pursue those common objectives. I don't think there's anything that says you don't have influence, and I don't think there's anywhere that it's written that you can't write the same letter I wrote, but coming from you saying, gee, we would like to know a lot more about this. We're responsible for a lot of things that go on in the county, and we need to know more.
Okay. Yeah. Are there any, I'll open it up to discussions. Anybody have any pertinent questions here? Leo?
Just for the record, you read from a piece of paper in regards to West Tinsbury Selectmen and
West Tinsbury,
and CBAC. What you read was an actual quote, though. Those weren't your comments. Is that correct?
No,
I just wanted on the record.
I should have brought them. I ordered copies of the DVD and I transcribed it myself. Okay. The written transcription is mine. And I can give you the link.
Thank you. Preston, the PowerPoint presentation that you made earlier, is that available in a paper copy?
Yeah. I can send it, but if you like, I have one copy I'm happy to get.
You could give it to the clerk and we'll make copies for the docs.
And again, I have no further questions for the two gentlemen, but are we going to discuss this during the open session, or are we going to pursue this any further? What are our plans?
Well, I mean, that's an open question as to how far we want to go with this. Once again, there's two issues here. First of all, as the two speakers have suggested, they have questions about the openness and so on, and the appropriateness of a lot of actions. So our question is, what is our role? I mean, I discussed this the last time we brought this. What is the role of the Assembly of Delegates in this controversy? We're not, for instance, if ethical questions are brought up, it's not really for us. I mean, if I thought that someone in this room had an ethical conflict, I couldn't challenge them. It's not how it works. The only one it's up to them and the Attorney General.
Right.
So ethics questions are not an issue for us. And as far as the fact that they may have made unwise financial decisions, that's not an issue for us either. I mean, stupidity doesn't come under our purview, if that's what you want to call it. It's not going on with that. But But if you want to, well, maybe it does sometimes.
You know, except our own.
Except our own. Okay. So then the question is that this is what I'm really searching for, and I think the other delegates are searching for. I know that we have the right to investigate, if you want, any aspect of county government. I'm sure we would get a response from CVEC, as you have, that they don't consider themselves a branch of county government. All right, they're separate. All of these organizations, both Cape Light Compact and CVEC, were set up under separate legislation. It was authorized by the legislature.
We've been talking about the open meeting law, and I really don't think we can have a discussion, even in the limited extent that you are trying to carry on now at this meeting. I would suggest that there's been a request made by this group, and that request be put on the agenda for a future meeting. We discuss it at that point. We have representatives of CVEC if they wish to comment at that time. But I really don't think we should be carrying on this discussion any further today.
Well, under the charter, the speaker is in charge of all protocol, and my protocol is we can discuss it. Okay. So, as I was reminded by a moderator, a longtime moderator in Chatham, as long as the topic is specified, people are given an advance warning of what will be discussed. That covers us under the open meeting law. The commissioners may have a different interpretation, but I don't. So, I guess, do you want to say somebody?
Excuse me. I want to ask Paul if you want to make a motion to move on to the next agenda item.
I raised it as a point of order. I was ruled out of order by the chair.
You can make a motion.
You can rule it out. The chair will rule that out of order too. Whether a topic goes on this discussion or not is up to me. Okay. All right. I don't want to be rude, but we have to do things according to Hoyle here. Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Learning as we go and reading what the charter says about our role, it seems to me that our role here is strictly limited to any questions we would have for the Board of County Commissioners. It sounds to me like the Board of County Commissioners is a segment of county government, and if we have, and they are a member of CVEC. Only recently I found out who their representative was. And that's partly because if you go to some of the minutes, it doesn't, when they take votes, they don't list who votes. I have a concern about that. I know very little about banking, and any of you that know my life can tell that. But I know a lot about transparent government and open government, and those are issues that are important to me. So my suggestion would be, I'm not prepared to make a motion, but I think it would be, that we schedule an agenda item specifically with the Board of County Commissioners so we can ask them any questions we might have regarding their membership on CVEC. Thank you.
Okay, Leo.
Just because we're in discussion of this matter, I think that it might be easier for us to have either the chair or have one of our existing subcommittees look at the concerns which have been raised by a number of different citizens here today, and maybe hold some public hearings and public meetings to do some research on the questions that have been brought up here, as opposed to the entire assembly trying to do it and trying to schedule it, on an every 2-week basis and inviting people in and asking questions. It would seem to me that it would be easier for us if either one of our standing committees or if the chair would rather maybe just appoint a subcommittee to look into this matter and then to report back to the full assembly. I think that it would go a long way having requests come from the assembly as opposed to the individual delegates. And I think that's what I got from the presentation anyhow, is that's basically what the public is looking for us to step up to the plate and ask some questions. We can't anticipate, or nor should we anticipate, what the answer is going to be. But I believe that we have an obligation to the people that we represent to move forward. And quite frankly, I think the easiest way may be to do it through a subcommittee.
You want to make that a form of motion? Or?
Well, I think rather than belabor the thing, I would rather have everyone else's personal input. If they agree with me, I certainly would get it.
Okay, I'm going to approach the public in a minute, but I have to go down.
Yeah.
I have read some of the information that Mr. Bugler has, to a certain extent, bombarded us with. And I can understand that there are people who would react to that they don't want to read it at all. I have, however, read enough here that I am concerned. I'm concerned about what appears to be an excessive use of executive session, limitations on what should be accountable to the public, access to public records, things that should be public records, and I'm very concerned about, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe in one of the responses to a records request there was a claim that all of the documents had to be reviewed by counsel, and that the recipient, the requester, should pay for counsel review.
Well, that particular request was this clean renewable energy bond request, and it was worded that most of these documents were in the possession of counsel, would require 58 hours at $165 an hour. I actually modified my request to say, if you just want to send me whatever you currently have in your possession, I'll take that, because I could probably get my answer. And that was ignored. But the Public Records Division, by the way, said there was no conceivable way that counsel should be engaged to review all documents. It should be limited.
I'm going to say I certainly agree with that based on my own experience with this matter. Much as Mr. Bigler's approach may have alienated people, it's a long-standing principle of public records law that the identity of the requester and the purpose of the request have absolutely nothing to do with the response to it. Now, that being said, I've read our home rule charter, and I think that the authority under the charter is extraordinarily broad. May act at any time upon a request to act by any member on the report on any aspect of government. May require the Board of Regional Commissioners and the Administrator to appear and answer questions. May appoint a committee to consult on any matter and to report back to the full Assembly. I think we have extraordinarily broad power to investigate here. And I think Leo's suggestion is a good one. I think an ad hoc committee to investigate this, to have some hearings, to obtain some information, and to report back to us is the way that we ought to go.
Anyone else? John?
Mr. Speaker, did anyone from that might have a different opinion of this matter ask for time today?
Well, they're going to get time right now. In other words, I was just going to go through it.
I would formally request we do that. Thank you.
Okay. Does anyone who hasn't spoken already like to make a comment on the matter before us here, the presentation? Yes. Lewis, still here?
James Rogers, Sandwich, Wellfleet in the summertime. In response to Mr. Bergstrom's suggestion that we go to our local officials, I did exactly that at the Commissioner's suggestion. I went to our town manager, Bud Dunham, who also happens to be the CVEC rep, but he chooses not to attend CVEC meetings. We, in effect, have been without a CVEC rep since Chuck Leekamp resigned last September. I asked him for any documentation, any financial documentation he might have from CVEC. He looked twice in the files of Sandwich Town Hall. There was nothing. I have not gone to the selectmen, but as detailed by Mr. Ribnick and Mr. Bibler, we can't get answers from CVEC and CLC. We can't get answers from the commissioners. When we go to our town officials, in this case the town manager, they don't know what's going on. I think this hot potato was really back in your purview. I also checked with my CLC representative after a Cape Light Compact meeting a couple of months ago, and he said, well, I'm very new to this, so I really don't know what's going on yet. And also, you heard what our attorney, who happens to be the attorney for both CLC and CVEC, said, that any questions really have to go through Maggie Downey. So once again, I think those of us in the public are checked, not checkmated. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Lewis, did you have something to say?
Yeah, why not?
Hi, John.
Never ask a selectman whether he has something to say. We're always going to get the same answer.
Well, it's nice of you to say that because, Ron, you've been there, and Cheryl, you've been there, so you understand. This is all about one thing, just so everybody understands it. This is all about Brewster Wind. Everything else is a subterfuge. It's all about Brewster Wind. It's been brought up on a couple of occasions, and that's what it's all about. It was all about Harwich Wind at one point, and it may be the public records request, but there is questions that we have why certain individuals are so inclined to create a need for documents when they're not even from Brewster. But there's a great many people who are involved with this who are not from Brewster, but this is all about Brewster Wind. That's all it's about. No matter what anything else you hear, that's the whole concern. I would echo what, I don't know whether it was Leo or Ron who said one thing, but there have been a lot of comments that have been made over the past 6 months. And by the way, Mr. Bibler stated he got involved in this in December of last year. Well, if you went through the email records of October and September of last year, you would find several hundred pages of Bibler emails that went out to everybody and anybody who had a machine. There have been a lot of comments made with regard to two county employees, Maggie Downey and Mark Zielinski, and they've been thrown under the bus on a lot of occasions by this group and by one of our county administrators. And those are good employees. And if they've done something illegal, then you have a right to investigate them. But if they've done their job, then you ought to ask them the questions. They've quoted a lot of things. They quoted, I'm not sure what selectman was talking and where he got his quote, but I don't remember that in Brewster where someone said a lot of fluff. But there's a lot of information that comes here that, if you say something enough, it becomes a fact. But it's not a fact. And you really have to figure out what it is your role is. CBEC, Cape Light Compact, they are part of whether CBEC is part of the county government, whether Cape Light Compact is, you ought to ask them the questions. And yes, a lot of information is requested by people under the public information, and in many instances you do go to your attorney to find out whether or not at this juncture you have to give that information. Now, those of you, Ron, Cheryl, who have been on the Board of Selectmen in certain towns or you've been involved in some of these things, you know you get a ton of requests. And you do check to find out whether or not you are required to give that information at that time or whether it is priority information or executive session information. And I think that's something you need to ask the CBEC people, the Cape Light Compact people. But to have them roasted here by Mr. Bibler and Mr. Ribnick without them having an opportunity to reply is presumptuous and rude on their part. And I think that's something that you really need to address. But again, this is all about derailing Brewster Wind. And just so everybody understands, at the last town meeting, 64%, that's a large number, 64% of the voters at town meeting, at the largest attended town meeting in our history, voted to approve a zoning bylaw change which would allow us to do something different from than the planning board wanted. And they couldn't even have a vote. So what this is, they're going from board to board to board to board in order to get somebody to listen to them to try and derail this process. And that's what it's all about.
Ed, can I ask you a question? Are you current chairman?
No, we rotate chairs. I was the chair last year.
Do you know what financial option, the financing option CBEC is pursuing for the Brewster Wind project?
We have all the pro forma information. We have contracts. We'll be discussing on Monday night. And if we all agree and sign the contracts, they will become public documents at that time. Contracts do not have to become public documents until you fully discussed it and then signed those public documents. Your boards of selectmen, people like that, are voted in, and we were given the authority at town meeting to negotiate with CBEC to construct these turbines. The town meeting gave us that authority, and therefore it is not. It's not up to us. It's not our duty to go back to individual selectmen meetings and ask for opinions about the pro forma and that. But it will become public.
So I mean, just because this is a key point that was made by the previous speakers, they said that basically a submission to these quasi-public entities by the town of Brewster is what you're saying, that's confidential information?
At this point, yes.
That's yes. Would you like to?
I have a question of Mr. Lewis, and I guess anyone else in the room might want to answer it, but currently the CVC is financing 8 photovoltaic projects. 2 of them are in Brewster. Does anyone in the room object to CVC financing those?
To my knowledge, we have not had any objections, but they haven't really come up yet. We'll find out when the people who live near where they are, when they come back. I know in Eastham they had a project that was going to be financed, but they got that land converted to public land conservation lands.
There's others, Harwich, Eastham, Barnstable High School, another one of them is Vineyard. So there are CVC financed projects that are not wind that are pursuing without opposition.
Right. That's why I think it's all about wind.
But nobody's opposing the CVC financial involvement in those projects.
As far as I know that.
Okay. Yes, John.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Just to reiterate, did not the town of Brewster vote by a comfortable majority twice at town meeting on these wind regulations, vote positively twice?
3 times, and they were 2 were unanimous, and 1 was had to be 2/3, so it was like 5/6.
Okay, and seeking, in your opinion, seeking DPU as an exemption for this project is a legal form of options to you?
Absolutely.
I just wanted to make that clear.
It is legal, and it was discussed before we even, last February, it was discussed after the planning board meeting where it was a 3-3-1 vote. Then it was discussed whether we would go directly, ask CVEC to go directly to DPU, or whether we would put that zoning article on.
We're going to have to.
Thank you.
Thank you. We're going to have to come to a decision here pretty soon. I see a hand up in the back. You have a quick comment? And then I'm going to ask the board, rather the assembly, whether they want to take any action on this.
My name is Kathy Sherman. I am from Brewster. I did not want to really so much speak to the Brewster issue as the kinds of issues that I think that you do have authority for. I absolutely dispute what Mr. Lewis just said. This is way too late for trying to do anything about Brewster Wind. Brewster Wind has illustrated some of the difficulties. For instance, first and foremost, I would like to see CLC and CVEC have more independence of boards. The representatives to the 2 boards from Harwich and Brewster happen to be the same person. And I also am concerned, very concerned, about whether the board of directors represents the people or the municipalities that appoint them. In the case of Harwich and Brewster, they are people who have come from the Alternative Energy Committee and had a long history with Compact and maybe have very good expertise. But that is one of my questions is, do the various board members have the familiarity with the project to judge it and to be making the decisions they're making? In terms of what you do, these are 2 county employees and they're using county facilities. You have the power of the purse. A month ago, it was mentioned by Falmouth to look at what the presentations to the towns were. There's also a presentation that explores the relationship between CLC, written by the gentleman who wrote a letter to Cape Cod Times assuring that there was no efficiency money used and transferred to CVEC. If you look back at the earlier minutes, long before the towns became members, it was 2 county employees, and they may be doing wonderful jobs. I know they're doing a very wonderful job at selling the project. So this is not in any way a reflection on the people. It's more, does their involvement conflict with their other duties to the county? And okay, I'll stop there, but I do want to write to you. And I do hope you at least have a committee to look into.
I'd like to get a motion. I'll recommend so I'd like to get a motion on the floor to find out where we're going with this. Leo, did you have something to say?
I would move that we appoint a formal committee to respond to the concerns of the public and acquire relevant information on behalf of the full assembly to address the concerns raised by the public on July 6th meeting regarding the propriety of the past actions and stated purposes of the Cape Light Compact and the Cape and Vineyard Electric Cooperative, including the structure of these boards.
Second. Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Okay, Mr. Bill, do you have the floor to take a vote?
I wanted this.
I'm not going to argue with you guys anymore, but people can speak, the public can speak to the motion. That's the way I normally do it in chat. If that's not the case, since we're not in convene, yeah, I mean, you probably prejudice your case by speaking now anyway, Mr. Bill.
Comment to my motion. I left it broad that we appoint a committee, and I'll leave it to the discretion of the chair whether he wants to use a standing committee or appoint a new advisory committee to address this. That's why I didn't include that language in the motion.
Okay. We have a motion on the table. It's been moved and seconded. Yes, Spiro?
Comment in the time that we've known that this meeting was going to happen. I took the opportunity to meet with my CLC and CVEC reps from the town of Yarmouth. Found it very helpful and informative. I got my education that way. I don't intend to vote in favor of appointing a committee to do what we each do on our own. I think we should just get to the heart of the matter and debate it.
You think so your suggestion is you think the Assembly should do it?
No, all I'm saying is I'm voting against the motion because I've had the opportunity to exercise the information that I needed from the representatives that are selected and appointed to these boards. And I think we can all avail ourselves of the same opportunity before we come back here 2 weeks or 4 weeks from now and address the underlying issues that they brought to our attention.
Leo?
Specifically to the delegate's comment, if he has pertinent information to some of the concerns that were raised by citizens today, then he should have at least shared that information with us. And I don't think that this board should go off one member at a time gathering information. We have been asked by the public, and I think that we would be doing just to at least look into it and to clarify it. As the gentleman said earlier, some of the comments made here today were frivolous and in his terms rude. Well, you know what? Maybe this subcommittee will discover that they have been, and that all the stuff mentioned is wrong. I don't think we should go on it one-on-one. I think we as an assembly need to address this as a group. And I think we would better do it through a subcommittee process. That way we could actually hold hearings and take in some public comment and report back to the full assembly. I certainly do not have a problem with if you all want to vote this motion down. But I'll tell you, I will be prepared to make another one right after that, saying that the full assembly do it. And I just think that we should be doing it as a subcommittee situation.
Yeah.
Second, point of order. Point of order?
I'll give you, yeah.
Are you in session? Have you?
No, anybody can sit. Don't listen to these guys. Anybody can, the members of the public can speak to a motion that's on the floor.
But can a motion be on the floor until the assembly has convened?
Of course. Oh, sure.
I thought you couldn't make a motion.
Please, if you're going to talk, use the microphone.
You're going to have to stand up and explain what you're saying.
Can you recognize the delegate from Dennis who has a similar question?
It's over here now.
I thought that you could not make a motion.
Go to the...
Oh, here. I just thought thought that legally you had to make a motion after the assembly convened. We are still in the public input, and we have not called the meeting to order, so that I would think this discussion should wait till you convene, that's all.
Well, we moved to accept the minutes. We moved to approve the agenda. We moved to a lot of things. I mean, you might be right, but I'm not the Wizard of Oz here. But I'm sure if you're right, somebody will tell me down the road. So we have a motion on the floor. It's been moved and seconded. There's no further comment. Just a comment.
I'm going to be abstaining on this. I agree with Gentleman Wellfleet that I thought that I came to listen today. I heard what the gentleman had to say and various speakers had to say. And we were going to have a full discussion on this, and I would want to do it within the confines of our meeting and put a motion forward and have a chance to look at that and perhaps speak to members of the public and have that information. But we didn't challenge the ruling of the chair. You had the right to move forward with it, but I'm not going to I'll be abstaining on the motion.
Well, you see, we're talking semantics here, because what we're deciding is, do we want to drop this, or do we want to pursue it? That's really, and I think what Leo was saying is his motion is a vehicle by which we can continue this discussion. Now, there's other vehicles. I could put it on the agenda. I have no objection to that. But I wanted, before I did that, I wanted to know whether or not the delegates want to pursue this. That's my, and if it's so, how? Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I guess because you just said whether we want to pursue it. I'm not even sure what we're pursuing. I've heard a lot of different things. I've heard complaints about are the representatives of CVEC and CLC representing the town or the people? Well, they represent both because they're appointed by usually the selectmen who are representative of the people. So I think there's a big, I'm just confused on what, if we go down this path, and I don't want to use the word witch hunt, or what exactly are we doing? I understand the serious concern that people have, and I've read the many emails that I have not deleted, all of them, and I do have some concerns, but I also think that what someone who wants us to do, I don't think we can do. I mean, I think Mr. Lewis is right. This is about Brewster. They want to stop Brewster. I'm trying not to feel that is really what's being driven here. I think they have a serious concern. I would like to support Leo's motion, but I was going to abstain also, and then Tom being to that, because I'm just not sure what we're doing here and what we're going to get out of this, because it doesn't seem to be we don't seem to have any real direction. Are we going to investigate them on their financials? Or what? I mean, I think we should maybe we could ask CLC and CVEC to come in and do a presentation also. And then put it again on the agenda item to talk about what are we trying to get out of this.
I agree with you. I'll tell you, here's the dilemma. I'm going to try to move this along, but these gentlemen asked to be on the agenda. They were put on the agenda. I cannot simply say, you have 30 minutes, see you later, go out the door. Once something's discussed, as we've had many discussions about, once something is put on the table in a public meeting, the public has a right to comment, which means that everyone here has the right to comment on the presentation, and the delegates have the right to comment on it. So it becomes a topic. Now, what we're trying to do is go forward in a limited way, but if I have the CLC come back, if I have CVEC come in and they give a presentation, the public is going to be allowed to comment on that, and the delegates are going to be allowed to comment on that. So, I mean, we are either going to pursue this, or there's no hedging. You can't be a little bit, you can't go a little ways down the road and say, well, we're kind of going to do it, but, we'll limit it in such a way. We either going to pursue this or not, from a practical standpoint. Or we could do it through the committee process, in which case they could hold public hearings and do it that way. So I'm just looking for a way for the decision of the delegates. That's all.
I think you're limiting your options. I mean, just as the gentleman, the lady from Nashville suggested, you got to have a workshop. Have a workshop. We get all our questions answered, unless we all think we're all experts on the Cape-like compact. And that way we would be able to interact as much as we wanted, and then later do a public forum. There are a lot of options that we have here. Just repeat, I wasn't ready. I wasn't coming in today feeling we were going to move forward with an investigation or whatever. I thought we deliberated at a future point in time.
Okay, well, John?
I too would rather see it on put it on the agenda as an item, and therefore not have any clouding of the new open meeting laws. I think we should discuss it at a more reasonable time stretch, as the delegate from Barnstable said.
Okay, well, right now I have a motion on the floor. Cheryl, but I have a motion on the floor. We're going to have to vote on this.
All right, I'll speak then to the motion. I was originally leaning towards voting for the motion because I have a reflexive need always to empower the citizenry when they feel frustrated. And clearly there's frustration here. And they ask questions and they feel like they're not getting them answered, and they go one place and they go another, and I'm thinking, well, wouldn't it be nice to help out? Having said that, I feel like the description of what the potential charge for this committee would be overly broad and beyond, frankly, the scope of the assembly. I feel strongly that the scope is right what I started with, which is that Barnstable County is a member of Cape Lake Compact. Barnstable County is also a member of CDAC. That is how we are related to those two entities, and so I think our questions, frankly, should go to our executive branch, since they appoint the representatives to those groups. I would love to see that on the agenda. And if this motion fails, I may make that motion. But indeed, I hope that's where the Assembly takes this, that we have a, yes, great, have a forum, invite CDAC, invite CLC, invite everyone on the planet. But in the end, I think the conversation needs to be between the Assembly of Delegates and the Board of County Commissioners, and that's the agenda item we have to schedule. Thank you.
Okay, any other further comment? If not, we'll take a vote on the motion. You want to do it individually?
Richard Anderson?
Yes.
Cheryl Andrews?
Yes.
Ronald Bergstrom?
Yes.
Leo Kukunis?
Yes.
Chris Kanega? James Killian?
Yes.
Marcia King?
No.
Tom Lynch?
Abstain.
Teresa Martin?
No.
Deborah McCutcheon?
Yes.
Spiro Mitrakostas?
No.
John Oman?
No.
Paul Pilcher?
No.
Anthony Scalise?
Mr. Speaker, as was pointed out from a member of the public, we're still in session as a committee of the whole. So aren't these one-for-one votes?
I have absolutely no idea.
No. Well, I'm just reading from the agenda. We're in the committee of the whole. Hence my confusion about all the calculations.
So, two senators actually. Yeah, right.
I'll take it. All right, I'm getting wrapped up in procedural issues here. With the abstention, with the two people who were abstaining, we actually only have 42.81 now. I don't know if that matters. You're in the building, so you might be considered part of it. But as a practical matter, the motion is going to fail anyway.
Can we have a count of the motion?
Sure, it was, oh no, maybe it isn't good.
You need 51% of the vote.
You gotta take the wisdom of Solomon into this.
There were 29.53% voting yes, 27.66 no, and I have 42.81% of the total delegation either absent or abstaining, not voting.
So the question is, can a motion pass without a majority, without a quorum vote? No. That's what I would also rule. Unless we have 50% of the people actually voting, the motion must fail. Now,
Mr. Speaker,
yes.
I think that is more than 50%. If you add the yeas and the nays, and not the abstention, I think we're well over 50%.
Oh, I see. She said voting present. I thought it said present.
57.19% total yes and no.
So the motion passes.
29.53%.
Now, will you read the motion? Do you have the motion?
Would you like it?
As long as it's verbatim, yes.
I have it in verbatim.
Okay.
You want it now? For the record?
Just read it for the record.
Appoint a formal committee to respond to the concerns of the public and acquire relevant information on behalf of the full assembly to address the concerns raised by the public on the July 6th meeting regarding the propriety of the past actions and stated purposes of Cape Cod Light Compact and Cape Cod Vineyard Electric Cooperative, including but not limited to the structure of the boards.
Okay. I don't want to belabor this point, but I appoint the committees and I have discretion as to who gets appointed. It's conceivable I could appoint a committee as a whole as the committee. In other words, I can have everybody. So we'll deal with that down the road. Right now, I think we've exhausted this topic for the day. Okay.